Hey guys, tonight we're taking a gentle stroll back in time, slipping through the velvet curtains of the past to the vibrant, often surprising world of Elizabethan England. Imagine yourself there. The narrow, muddy streets are alive with the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the distant cry of a street hawker, and the rich, earthy scent of woodsmoke mingling with something less pleasant. You're bundled in wool and linen, perhaps a little itchy, and the air is thick with anticipation and the quiet hum of secrets. This isn't a world of dating apps and direct messages. Oh no, the dance of desire here was a subtle, intricate ballet, often performed in the shadows. And you probably won't survive this journey without at least one historical eyebrow raise. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening, drop a comment below with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to see where these sleepy history lessons travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself stepping onto cobbled streets, the year perhaps 1588, the air still buzzing with the recent defeat of the Spanish Armada. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, sits on the throne, her very existence a powerful, complex statement about love, power, and the lack thereof. But beneath the grand pronouncements and the intricate courtly life, ordinary Elizabethans, much like us, were navigating the thorny, beautiful, and sometimes utterly bewildering landscape of desire. Our modern understanding of love and sex often doesn't quite fit into their world. For many, marriage was a transaction, a practical arrangement between families to secure land, wealth, or status. Love, if it came at all, was a bonus, a delightful side effect, not necessarily the primary driver. You might imagine a bustling marketplace, not for goods but for eligible partners, where the dowry was the true measure of a man's or woman's worth. But even within these seemingly rigid structures, the human heart, being the stubborn thing it is, found ways to flutter, to yearn, to stray. Consider for a moment the surprising story of Anne Clifford, a remarkable woman whose life spanned the late Elizabethan era into the Jacobean. While her most famous struggles involved her inheritance, her personal writings, her diaries reveal a deeply complex inner life, including her thoughts on love and marriage. Though hers was an aristocratic marriage, arranged for dynastic purposes, her entries show a pragmatic approach mixed with moments of real emotional vulnerability regarding her husband, and later, longing for affection. She meticulously recorded her frustrations, her illnesses, and the intricacies of her daily life, offering a rare glimpse into the intimate world of a woman navigating a marriage of convenience. She might sigh in her diary about her husband's coldness, or detail a particularly frustrating argument, but there's rarely a whisper of fiery, illicit passion. For her, desire might have manifested as a longing for respect or companionship within the confines of her duty. Historians still argue whether her measured tone reflects genuine emotional detachment or a careful self-censorship for posterity. A quirky tidbit from this era: did you know that it was considered bad luck for a couple to marry in May? Marry in May, and you'll rue the day, the old proverb went. Nobody is quite sure why, but it certainly put a damper on spring weddings, pushing them into June or July. Perhaps it was simply too close to Beltane, an ancient pagan festival associated with fertility, and the church wanted to discourage any lingering pagan connections. Or perhaps, more simply, it was just a silly superstition that stuck. So, while the grand plays of Shakespeare spoke of passionate, often tragic love affairs, the reality for many was far more grounded. You wouldn't openly declare your affections in the town square without inviting scandal, unless it was part of a very public, very formal courtship sanctioned by your family. Imagine having to rely on your parents or guardians to vet your potential spouse, to scrutinize their finances and their family lineage, rather than their charming smile or the way they make you laugh. It was a time when the practical often trumped the passionate, yet beneath the surface, the universal human urge for connection, for intimacy, and yes, for desire, found its own hidden corners to blossom, sometimes beautifully, sometimes tragically. You're just beginning to glimpse the subtle intricacies. As you continue your quiet drift through Elizabethan London, you begin to notice the intricate dance of courtship. Forget swiping right on a dating app. Here, every glance, every subtle gesture, every gift exchanged, and indeed, every word spoken was carefully choreographed, especially among the gentry and nobility. Imagine yourself, if you will, at a grand country estate, perhaps observing a stately game of bowls on a manicured lawn. A young man, well-dressed and eager, catches the eye of a lady who has perhaps just returned from London. He can't simply walk up and introduce himself or strike up a casual conversation. That would be dreadfully uncouth, even scandalous, unless under very specific, controlled circumstances. Instead, he might resort to a more traditional, roundabout approach. He could send a small symbolic gift, perhaps a beautifully embroidered handkerchief, or a delicate ribbon plucked from his own hat. This wasn't just a present, it was a subtle, loaded question. If she chose to accept it, it was a gentle signal of potential interest, an invitation for further, equally subtle overtures. If, however, she returned it or worse, ignored it altogether, well, that was her polite but firm way of saying, "Better luck next time, old chap. Your prospects here are rather dim." The entire process of finding a suitable match, particularly for those of status, very often began with an intermediary. This could be a trusted family friend, a well-connected relative, or even a professional matchmaker, though the latter were perhaps more common among the rising merchant classes. This person, often an older woman with a keen eye for social maneuvering, would discreetly inquire about family finances, scrutinize reputations, and yes, even delve into the health and fertility of potential spouses. You might find yourself observing a scene where a seemingly casual conversation unfolds during a visit. A mother might subtly praise her daughter's exceptional needlework skills, her talent for managing a household, or her impressive dowry to a visiting dignitary, all the while hoping to pique his interest for his eligible son or nephew. It was a careful, almost theatrical performance, where directness was often avoided in favor of suggestion and implication. The focus was less about sparkling conversation and immediate chemistry, and far more about demonstrable assets, both tangible and intangible, that would benefit the family line. One of the most profound insights into the Elizabethan perception of desire and partnership comes from Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings. While her comprehensive focus is often on royalty and the highest echelons of power, the underlying principles of dynastic marriage and the intensely political nature of intimacy trickle down through much of society. For queens and princesses, their bodies were often literal pawns in a geopolitical game, vessels for forging alliances and securing peace or power. This top-down pressure on marriage as a strategic tool rather than a romantic one was deeply ingrained. For example, royal marriages, and even those among the nobility, often involved detailed physical inspections to ensure fertility and suitability. Imagine, as a potential suitor, having your physical health and even your physical capabilities publicly scrutinized, sometimes by multiple parties, simply to ensure you could produce a healthy heir and secure the family line. It's certainly a far cry from a first date over coffee or a casual meet cute, isn't it? It adds a layer of immense pressure, doesn't it, to what we might consider the most personal of human connections. A quirky tidbit from this very era, something that might make you chuckle softly. It was widely considered bad luck for a couple to marry in May. "Marry in May, and you'll rue the day," was a popular proverb, whispered among neighbors, and even cited by some as a reason to postpone a wedding. Nobody is quite sure of the exact origin of this superstition, but it certainly put a damper on spring weddings, often pushing them into June or July. Perhaps it was simply too close to Beltane, an ancient pagan festival associated with fertility and joyous, less structured unions, and the burgeoning Protestant church wanted to discourage any lingering pagan connections. Or perhaps, more simply, it was just one of those peculiar illogical superstitions that somehow manages to stick around, passed down from generation to generation, creating a slight, whimsical ripple in the grand tapestry of Elizabethan life. Historians still argue whether the immensely formal constraints of Elizabethan courtship, with its emphasis on family, property, and strategic alliances, ultimately led to a deeper, more profound appreciation for genuine affection when it did manage to arise, or if it simply fostered a pervasive culture where clandestine affairs and hidden passions were far more common than the surviving records openly suggest. Was true love a rare jewel, a precious anomaly found amidst the calculated negotiations and pragmatic considerations? Or did it often have to hide itself in the shadows, blossoming in secret gardens and whispered conversations? You can almost sense the constant tension in the air, a subtle hum between public duty and private yearning, a fascinating, sleepy paradox. The very air itself seems to whisper tales of hidden glances, unspoken desires, and whispered promises exchanged under the watchful, yet sometimes oblivious eyes of society. It's a world where the heart's true inclinations often had to find very clever, very quiet ways to express themselves, leading us to wonder just how much passionate yearning lay just beneath the proper surface. Having glimpsed the subtle intricacies of Elizabethan courtship, let's now drift deeper into the very practical yet often unromantic heart of marriage, the dowry. For you, an observer from a distant future, the concept of a dowry might seem quaint, almost archaic, a relic from a time long past. But in Elizabethan England, it was not merely a tradition. It was the bedrock upon which countless marriages were built, a foundational pillar of social and economic stability for families across all but the very lowest strata of society. Imagine a young woman, perhaps barely out of her teens, her future happiness, her social standing, and indeed her family's continued prosperity, resting heavily on the amount of land, goods, or precious money her family could provide to her prospective husband. This wasn't just pocket money, you see, or a small bridal gift. It was her share of the family wealth, an essential investment into her new household, and often a crucial bargaining chip in the intricate negotiations that preceded any formal betrothal. You might find yourself in this sleepy historical reverie, standing in a dimly lit smoky hall, perhaps in a bustling merchant's home or a country manor. You'd be listening intently as two fathers, or their appointed representatives, haggle with a surprising blend of sternness and politeness over the precise specifics of a dowry. It's less a negotiation about the true emotional connection between their children and more about livestock, about acres of fertile farmland, about the specific number of ounces of sterling coin, or even the promise of future timber rights. My daughter, sir, one might boast with a slight puff of his chest, brings 5 hides of prime, well-watered farmland, and 300 pounds sterling in good coin. The other might then counter, perhaps with a knowing look, my son, sir, offers a thriving wool business, established for 3 generations, and a secure, unimpeachable lineage stretching back the conquest. It was a high-stakes game of economic chess, played out with meticulous detail, where personal feelings, if they existed at all between the future spouses, were often a secondary, if not entirely absent, consideration in the ledger of assets and liabilities. The cold, hard facts of finance often overshadowed the warmer, softer feelings of the heart, a stark reality that shaped countless lives. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality, though it covers a much broader historical sweep and delves into the philosophical underpinnings of power and desire, offers profound insights into how societal structures, particularly economic ones, profoundly shape the very expression and even the concept of desire within a given era. In Elizabethan England, the dowry system, a clear and undeniable economic structure, acted as a powerful determinant. It dictated who could marry whom, when such unions could take place, and under what specific circumstances. A woman with a substantial dowry, for instance, naturally had more options available to her, more perceived worth in the complex marriage market, even if she was, by conventional standards, plain of face or had a less than charming temperament. Her financial contribution often outweighed personal allure. Conversely, a woman of otherwise gentle birth and good breeding but little fortune might find her choices severely limited, often forced into lives of dependence as companions to wealthier relatives, or even, in rarer cases, into monastic life. This pervasive economic reality placed immense, often unspoken pressure on families, particularly those with multiple daughters, to secure advantageous matches that would not deplete, but ideally enhance, the family's standing. A truly quirky tidbit that reveals the delightfully practical, or perhaps maddeningly bureaucratic side of Elizabethan dowries. Sometimes, the dowry wasn't just a lump sum of money or a parcel of land. It could be a promise of future inheritance, contingent upon certain conditions, or even a meticulously detailed collection of valuable household goods. You might find a marriage contract, beautifully penned on parchment, detailing specific pieces of oak furniture, a certain amount of silver plate for the dining table, a set of fine linens, or even a specified number of sheep or cattle. Imagine for a moment your own modern wedding registry, but instead of just suggestions, it's legally binding, negotiated by your parents, and carries the full weight of your future financial security. It certainly adds a layer of permanence and solemnity to your choice of, say, a particular pewter tankard or a set of embroidered cushions, doesn't it? It elevates even the humblest household item to a symbol of marital security. Historians still argue whether the dowry system, despite its undeniable economic focus and seemingly unromantic nature, provided a certain inherent stability to marriages by ensuring both parties came with a tangible, vested contribution to the new household. Or, conversely, if it simply stifled genuine affection, leading to marriages of convenience that perpetuated social inequalities and perhaps even encouraged hidden desires to find expression outside the marital bond. Was it a pragmatic foundation for lasting, if not always passionate, unions? Or was it, in essence, a gilded cage for personal desire, trapping individuals in arrangements they might not have chosen freely? As you listen, you can almost hear the soft rustle of parchments being unrolled, the faint scratch of quills meticulously recording financial futures, determining not just wealth and status, but often the very course of a young person's life and the potential for any hidden corner of desire to flourish. It paints a picture where the practical often, if not always, took precedence over the passionate, a quietly fascinating truth of Elizabethan life. As the gentle hum of our historical journey continues, you begin to perceive the quiet, sometimes defiant stirrings of love beyond the legal in Elizabethan England. Despite the ironclad grip of dowries, the intricate web of social expectations, and the often unromantic realities of arranged marriages, the human heart, being the wonderfully rebellious and persistently hopeful organ it is, often yearned for something more, something deeply personal and freely chosen. Imagine the hushed whispers exchanged in a secluded corner of a grand manor garden, the quick, stolen glances across a crowded banquet hall, or the exquisitely folded letter, perhaps scented with rosewater, passed from a trembling hand to another under the very noses of unsuspecting chaperones. For countless individuals, true affection, if it blossomed at all, had to do so in these hidden corners, far from the critical, watchful eyes of parents, the ever-present gossip of neighbors, and the stern pronouncements of societal norms. Consider, for a moment, the compelling, though high-stakes story of a young woman named Frances Howard, a figure who, though deeply embedded in the upper echelons of the aristocracy, powerfully exemplifies the profound conflict between societal duty and personal desire. Her early life, typical for a woman of her standing, was meticulously dictated by her ambitious family, who relentlessly pushed her towards a politically advantageous marriage to Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex. This union, you must understand, was a calculated arrangement of convenience, a strategic alliance between powerful families, and entirely devoid of any genuine affection or personal choice on her part. Later in her life, however, her passionate desire for Robert Carr, a rising favorite of King James I, who, you'll recall, ascended the throne shortly after Elizabeth's reign ended, led to a scandal that rocked the court. This intense yearning resulted in a highly contentious divorce and even chilling accusations of murder against her previous husband, charges that, while debated by historians, highlight the extraordinary lengths to which individuals, even those of immense privilege, would go when trapped in loveless, suffocating marriages. While Frances Howard's story is a dramatic and singular example, its echoes whisper of countless quieter, less public instances where individuals across all social strata yearn desperately for a partner of their own choosing, often directly against overwhelming societal pressure and personal risk. This fundamental human yearning for a chosen partner, even in the face of significant social opprobrium and potential ruin, speaks volumes about the enduring and persistent power of personal desire. A truly quirky tidbit from this era, one that shows the ingenuity of a heart set on its own path, involves the practice of hand fasting. While not universally recognized as legally binding by the established church or common law, especially towards the latter half of Elizabeth's reign, it was a form of informal, often private, betrothal where a couple would simply declare their intent to marry to each other, sometimes with a trusted witness or two present, and consider themselves bound as husband and wife for a year and a day, or even for life. You might imagine a young couple, perhaps unable to afford the expense and public spectacle of a formal church wedding, or, more daringly, seeking to bypass strict parental objections, meeting secretly in a secluded glade or a quiet alcove. There, under the discreet gaze of the moon or the rustle of leaves, they would join hands, exchange solemn vows, and believe themselves to be married in the eyes of God, if not entirely in the strict legal sense of man. It was a beautiful, if often precarious, testament to the desire for personal agency and autonomy in the most intimate matters of the heart, a quiet rebellion against the rigid structures that sought to govern every aspect of their lives. Historians still argue quite passionately whether the pervasive prevalence of arranged marriages, with their focus on economic and social stability, somehow fostered a greater appreciation for the rare instances of genuine affection that did manage to bloom within those seemingly pragmatic unions. Or, conversely, if this very rigidity simply pushed more passionate, individualistic desires into clandestine relationships, secret rendezvous, and quiet, defiant acts of personal choice, did the perceived forbidden fruit of true love, unburdened by societal dictates, become all the sweeter and more intense because of the system? Or did the relentless pressure of that system merely crush such tender, nascent shoots of independent affection before they could ever fully bloom into acknowledged relationships? As you listen to the soft historical whispers, you can almost feel the quiet tension in the air, the constant push and pull between public duty and the deep, personal, often aching longing for a love freely given and freely received. It's a secret fire, burning softly yet persistently, beneath the impeccably proper and often unyielding surface of Elizabethan life, a testament to the enduring human spirit's quest for connection. Drifting deeper into the hidden corners of Elizabethan desire, you might find yourself immersed in the fascinating and often intricate world of masks and secret messages. In an era where direct, overt declarations of love were frequently frowned upon, deemed inappropriate, or even scandalous, especially in polite society and at the bustling royal court, people became remarkable masters of subtlety and coded communication. Imagine yourself for a moment attending a lavish courtly entertainment, perhaps a spectacular masque held in a grand hall decorated with shimmering tapestries and fragrant rushes. Lords and ladies are adorned in fantastical, often allegorical costumes, shimmering under the candlelight, performing elaborate, graceful dances and reciting poetic lines that might seem, on the surface, purely innocent. But this wasn't just frivolous amusement designed solely for entertainment. It was often a carefully constructed stage, a sophisticated theatrical space for veiled communication, a cunning way to express feelings and desires that simply couldn't be spoken aloud without risking social censure or outright scandal. A gentleman, perhaps smitten with a lady across the room, might discreetly commission a specific song to be performed by the court musicians, its lyrics perhaps a thinly disguised ode to her beauty, her wit, or his burgeoning affection, known only to her and a few close confidants. She, in turn, might carry a flower in her hand with a particular, well-understood symbolic meaning, or drop a delicate embroidered glove for a specific suitor to retrieve, initiating a brief, charged exchange of glances and whispered words that carried more weight than any shouted declaration. It was a thrilling, often dangerous game of hints, implications, and hidden meanings, where a slight misstep, a wrongly interpreted gesture, could lead to social embarrassment or even a public faux pas, but where success could quietly open the door to a clandestine courtship, a secret understanding. You might find yourself observing what appears to be a perfectly innocent exchange of intricately embroidered handkerchiefs, each stitch, each color, each motif a silent testament to a hidden message, a tender sentiment known only to the sender and the intended receiver, a beautiful secret held between two souls in a crowded room. Peter Webb's The Erotic Spirit Through History offers invaluable insights into how the expression of desire often adapts and transforms itself to fit the prevailing social, cultural, and moral norms of any given society. In Elizabethan England, with its strong emphasis on decorum, strict social hierarchy, and the pervasive influence of moralizing religious tenets, overt displays of affection or direct, unvarnished romantic pursuits were largely confined to the lower classes, whose lives were less scrutinized or relegated to very private, less formal settings. For the aristocracy and gentry, desire, if it was to be acknowledged at all, was often channeled through these elaborate, highly coded performances and symbolic exchanges. The masque, with its allegorical characters, its symbolic narratives, and its layers of metaphor, provided the perfect canvas for such hidden communications. A knight might play a character who pined for a distant, ethereal fairy queen, knowing full well that his beloved in the audience would understand the true, earthly object of his longing. It allowed for a public display of powerful emotion and passion, yet one that was safely veiled and protected behind multiple layers of artistic convention and unspoken understanding. This intricate game of hide and seek with emotion became an art form in itself. A truly quirky tidbit from this period, one that highlights the depth of this coded communication, involves the incredibly intricate and widely understood language of flowers. It wasn't just a quaint custom. It was a sophisticated means of nonverbal communication. A gift of a simple red rose, for instance, clearly and universally signaled passionate love, but a yellow rose could subtly convey jealousy or a waning affection. A sprig of rosemary was a symbol of remembrance, while a violet might denote faithfulness. Imagine, if you will, the careful thought that went into composing a small bouquet, each bloom a silent word in a secret love letter, handed over with a seemingly casual air during a stroll through a formal garden. It was a veritable secret code, accessible only to those who knew and understood the lexicon of flora, allowing for discreet, yet deeply meaningful, expressions of affection, longing, or even gentle rejection, all without uttering a single compromising or revealing word that could be overheard. It was poetry without ink, declarations without voice. Historians still argue whether these intricate, often frustratingly indirect methods of coded communication made the expression of desire more intense, more exciting, and more deeply cherished when it finally broke through the layers of artifice. Or conversely, if they simply created a stifling environment where genuine, spontaneous emotion struggled to find a direct, unmediated outlet, leading to endless misinterpretations, agonizing uncertainties, and tragically missed opportunities. Did the sheer challenge of conveying profound affection through metaphor and symbol heighten the thrill and potency of a forbidden or difficult love, making every small success feel like a grand triumph? Or did it merely complicate matters, fostering a world of unspoken longing and unfulfilled desires? As you listen to the soft rustle of silk as a secret note is passed, the muted melancholic strains of a lute playing a tender tune in the background, each element seems part of a beautiful, complex ballet of unexpressed yet deeply felt human longing, painting a vivid picture of a world where desire thrived in the hidden corners, perpetually seeking a quiet way to be seen and understood. As you settle deeper into the soft historical currents, you begin to appreciate another subtle yet remarkably powerful language of desire in Elizabethan England. The often overlooked yet profoundly expressive realm of fashion's alluring language. It wasn't merely about keeping warm in the drafty halls or simply adhering to the strict social norms of the day. Clothing was, in its very essence, a vibrant, often provocative, and endlessly intricate form of self-expression and communication. Imagine, if you will, the gentle rustle of rich silks and velvets as a lady glides past, the subtle gleam of precious jewels catching the candlelight, and the elaborate, almost architectural structures of starched lace collars framing a face. Every single element of dress, from the precise tilt of a man's fashionable hat to the specific color of a ribbon tied artfully around a woman's wrist, could carry a hidden meaning, a silent invitation, or even a subtle, discreet rebuff, all conveyed without a single word being spoken aloud. For a lady of the court or a wealthy merchant's wife, the way she wore her ruff, that iconic pleated collar, could be incredibly telling. A slightly wider, stiffer, and perhaps higher ruff might suggest a demure, almost unapproachable nature, emphasizing modesty and formality. Conversely, a softer, perhaps lower-cut ruff, or one that allowed a glimpse of the décolletage, could hint at a more alluring, perhaps even provocative disposition, inviting a second glance. And then there were the sleeves, often puffed dramatically at the shoulder, sometimes slashed intentionally to reveal the fine, almost translucent linen of the chemise beneath, subtly inviting the eye to linger. For a gentleman, the choice of fabrics and colors was equally important. He might wear a particular color to signify his allegiance or loyalty to a certain noble house or faction. But within that public display, a small, discreetly embroidered motif on his doublet, perhaps a hidden knot or a specific flower, could be a private message meant only for one specific pair of discerning eyes. The more elaborate, the more luxurious, and the more expensive the clothing, the more status and, by extension, potential desirability it conveyed, suggesting wealth, power, and influence, all highly attractive attributes in the marriage market. You might notice a lady carefully adjusting a tiny, artfully shaped beauty patch on her cheek, strategically placed not to cover a blemish, but to draw attention to a particular feature like her lips or the curve of her jaw. Or a gentleman, with a practiced nonchalance, might subtly flex a muscular calf revealed by his finely tailored padded hose, showcasing his physical prowess without seeming to try too hard. While Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality primarily explores broader power dynamics and the way societies construct and control discourses around sexuality, it implicitly highlights how societal control extends even to the most intimate aspects of life, including the body and its adornment. In Elizabethan England, this control was highly formalized through sumptuary laws. These laws rigorously dictated what different social classes were permitted to wear, not just for economic reasons, to prevent people from spending beyond their means, but, crucially, to maintain a rigid social order and reinforce hierarchy. Yet even within these seemingly stringent constraints, individuals found ingenious ways to express personal desire and subtly flirt. The very act of meticulous adherence to, or a clever, subtle rebellion against, these fashion norms could be a profound form of silent communication about one's character, aspirations, and even one's willingness to engage in a discreet, unspoken flirtation. It was a constant, fascinating negotiation between public propriety and private inclination, a silent dialogue conducted through fabric and embellishment. A truly quirky tidbit from this period, one that speaks directly to the hidden language of love, the tradition of love tokens, secretly hidden within garments. Imagine a lady, perhaps shy but deeply smitten, carefully and secretly sewing a small, tightly braided lock of her hair into the lining of her suitor's doublet, a secret charm resting close to his heart. Or he, equally smitten, might subtly slip a tiny, exquisitely painted miniature portrait of himself, or perhaps a small symbolic charm carved from bone or wood into her bodice or the intricate folds of her sleeve, where only she would find it. These were incredibly intimate, profoundly secret gestures, known only to the couple involved, transforming everyday clothing into a canvas for hidden affection and unspoken promises. Imagine the quiet thrill, the soft flutter in your chest, of discovering such a secret message tucked away, a private whisper of desire revealed only to you, a tactile testament to a hidden connection. Historians still argue whether the elaborate, often restrictive, and certainly expensive nature of Elizabethan fashion actually suppressed open, direct expressions of desire, forcing them underground, or if it simply channeled them into more creative, more symbolic, and perhaps even more tantalizing forms. Did the layers upon layers of fabric, the rigid collars, and the strict societal rules inadvertently make the human form more alluring by concealing it, fostering a heightened sense of intrigue and longing for what lay beneath? Or did it merely complicate the already difficult path of true love, leading to endless misinterpretations, frustrating ambiguities, and sadly, sometimes missed opportunities for genuine connection? As you listen to the soft swish of heavy silk skirts, the delicate clink of pearls against embroidered fabric, and the faint rustle of starch, you can almost hear these silent conversations of desire unfolding in the grand halls, the bustling streets, and the quiet corners of Elizabethan England. It's a gentle, reassuring reminder that even in the most buttoned-up, outwardly formal eras, human longing, That persistent, universal urge for connection always finds a way to express itself, often with a flair for the dramatic and a profound sense of subtle beauty. As your mind continues to softly wander through the verdant landscapes of Elizabethan England, you might find yourself strolling, perhaps with a sense of gentle intrigue, through a particularly enchanting yet purposefully designed feature of the grand estates, the gardens for clandestine meetings. These weren't just decorative spaces meant for growing exotic herbs or admiring the beauty of a newly introduced rose. They were often meticulously planned, living architectural spaces, offering secluded pockets of privacy and artfully crafted nooks perfect for a quiet conversation, a shared, meaningful glance, or even a fleeting, illicit touch that would be utterly unthinkable and certainly scandalous if performed indoors within the main house. Imagine yourself, for instance, navigating a maze-like knot garden. Its precisely clipped low hedges form intricate geometric patterns that, while undeniably beautiful to the eye, also offered surprisingly effective concealment. You could walk for minutes, feeling pleasantly lost within its green walls, all the while knowing that just around the next perfectly sculpted hedge, a hushed rendezvous might be taking place, a secret whispered between lovers. Or picture a secluded arbor, a charming rustic shelter completely overgrown with fragrant climbing roses and sweet-smelling honeysuckle, its entrance cleverly obscured by trailing vines and thick foliage. It was, in essence, a natural living room, a place utterly designed for whispered confidences, for the exchange of forbidden letters, far from the ever-present prying eyes and ears of observant servants and vigilant family members. These weren't accidental meeting spots, you see. They were deliberate architectural and horticultural choices, reflecting a subtle, yet profound, understanding of the human need for private intimacy, even in a society that outwardly valued public display and strict decorum above all else. The design itself was a quiet conspirator in matters of the heart. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, a fascinating exploration of royal intimacies and power, again offers a compelling lens through which to view this societal dynamic. While her examples might focus on the meticulously guarded royal apartments, the secret passages within palaces, or the secluded hunting lodges used by monarchs and their courtiers for their desires, the underlying principle holds universally true for all strata of society. When public life is rigid, heavily formal, and constantly scrutinized, private spaces become absolutely paramount for the expression of personal affection and intimacy. For Elizabethans, whether wealthy aristocrats or the burgeoning gentry, these elaborate gardens provided a semi-public, yet highly effective, form of privacy. You could legitimately claim to be merely admiring the newly shaped topiary, or perhaps discussing the proper pruning of a rose bush, all the while subtly meeting your beloved under the dappled shade of a weeping willow, the gentle rustle of leaves providing a natural organic cover for your hushed words and stolen moments. It was a clever way to blend in plain sight, a truly quirky tidbit from the gardening practices and architectural whims of the time. Elaborate water features, such as hidden fountains, cascading waterfalls, or mysterious echoing grottos, were not just popular decorative elements in these grand gardens. The gentle, constant murmur of flowing water wasn't merely for aesthetic pleasure. It served a remarkably practical purpose as excellent white noise. This natural acoustic curtain would effectively muffle conversations, ensuring that any intimate whispers or soft murmurs exchanged between lovers were lost to the soothing gurgle and splash of the water. It was, in a sense, an early, unintentional form of acoustic privacy, a delightful byproduct of landscape design that subtly facilitated secret meetings and romantic assignations, allowing hearts to speak more freely than they might have otherwise. Historians still argue, with a certain scholarly fondness, whether the proliferation and creation of these elaborate private garden spaces truly reflected a growing, perhaps even burgeoning, desire for personal intimacy and emotional connection in Elizabethan society, a move away from purely pragmatic unions. Or if, conversely, they were merely practical and necessary responses to the increasing strictures and moralizing pressures on public displays of affection that characterized the era. Were these gardens truly havens for blossoming true love, offering sanctuary to genuine emotional bonds? Or were they simply convenient, discrete locations for illicit assignations and brief, fleeting moments of passion? You can almost smell the faint, earthy scent of damp soil mingling with the delicate fragrance of lavender and rosemary. Hear the distant calming cooing of doves settling down for the evening, as you imagine these hidden corners of green. They stand, silent witnesses, alive with the quiet hum of secret passions, blossoming softly and cautiously under the watchful yet ultimately forgiving vastness of the Elizabethan sky, a testament to the enduring human need for both beauty and connection in a world of strict rules. As your journey continues to unfurl through the tranquil yet surprisingly intricate layers of Elizabethan England, you arrive at a profound and timeless truth: literature's romantic whispers. In a society where overt, direct displays of affection were often constrained by rigid social etiquette, strict moral codes, and the watchful eyes of the community, the stage, the printed page, and the quiet strumming of a lute became powerful, sanctioned conduits for expressing the full, tumultuous spectrum of human desire. Imagine, if you will, the soft, flickering light of a tallow candle illuminating a worn, much-loved playbook, its pages stained with use. Or picture a small, hushed group gathered in a lord's chamber, listening intently as a sonnet, fresh from a poet's pen, is recited aloud, its words resonating in the stillness. Here, through the eloquent and often poignant words of poets and playwrights, the unspoken longings of the heart, the deepest aches of affection, found a vivid, resonant voice. William Shakespeare, of course, stands as the towering, undisputed figure in this literary landscape, a true master of capturing the raw, beautiful, and often tragic essence of desire. His plays, like the timeless Romeo and Juliet with its star-crossed lovers, or the comedic complexities of Twelfth Night, explored every conceivable facet of love: passionate, unrequited, mistaken, enduring, and even the absurd. You might find yourself in this historical reverie, seated in the boisterous Globe Theater, the scent of sweat and oranges in the air, or perhaps in a more intimate, private performance for the nobility, watching characters grapple with love's confounding complexities. The audience, themselves constrained by their own social rules and the strictures of Elizabethan life, could experience these intense, often overwhelming emotions vicariously, finding their own hidden desires and secret yearnings mirrored in the dramatic declarations and agonizing dilemmas unfolding on stage. It was a safe, communal space for passionate yearning, a collective sigh of understanding, a shared moment where the heart's true feelings could, for a brief time, be openly acknowledged, if only through the artistry of fiction. But beyond the grand spectacles of the stage, the popularity of love poetry was immense, almost a societal obsession among the educated classes. Sonnets, in particular, became an incredibly popular and stylized form for expressing devotion, adoration, and even the depths of despair that unrequited love could bring. A gentleman, perhaps consumed by his feelings for a lady, might spend hours meticulously crafting a sonnet to his beloved, each line a carefully chosen word, each metaphor a subtle compliment. These poems would be filled with exquisite comparisons to nature's fleeting beauty, or subtle classical allusions that only an educated recipient would fully grasp, presenting it as a private, intimate gift, perhaps slipped discreetly into her hand. These weren't necessarily for public consumption, nor were they published for the masses. They were intimate exchanges, tiny, precious windows into the soul of the writer, meant only for the eyes of the adored. The very act of writing such verses, of carefully choosing each word, each rhyme, to convey a profound and often tender feeling, was in itself an act of desire, a quiet, contemplative expression of longing. Peter Webb's The Erotic Spirit Through History, a work that broadens our understanding of how human desire has been expressed across different epochs, helps us understand how art, including literature, serves as a powerful mirror reflecting, and indeed, often a profound shaper of societal attitudes towards desire. In a period marked by intense religious fervor, strict moralizing, and a rigid social hierarchy, literature provided a unique and sanctioned outlet for exploring erotic and romantic themes that might otherwise be deemed inappropriate or even dangerous if expressed in daily life. The inherent beauty of the language, the often classical settings, the use of mythological figures, or the allegorical nature of the characters allowed for a sublimation of desire, making it palatable, acceptable, and even admirable within the confines of artistic expression. It allowed audiences and readers to ponder the deepest, most confusing, and most exhilarating human connections without directly breaking the societal rules that govern their daily lives. It was a pressure valve for collective romantic yearning. A truly quirky tidbit from this rich literary world, one that reveals a charmingly specific form of poetic expression. Many Elizabethan love poems contained what were known as blazons. In a blazon, the poet would systematically praise individual physical features of their beloved, moving from her hair down to her lips, her eyes, her neck, and so on, often in exaggerated, almost fantastical, and sometimes to our modern ears, comical detail. You might read a poem that painstakingly lovingly describes a lady's lips as coral soft, or cherries ripe, or her eyes as twin stars, or suns in their celestial spheres, line by painstaking line. While sometimes earnest and deeply felt, this often served as a playful, yet incredibly detailed exploration of physical attraction, a verbal caress of beauty that allowed for a safe public contemplation of the physical form without crossing the line into impropriety. It was a way to admire and describe the beloved's body through the veil of poetic convention. Historians still argue with a gentle, ongoing scholarly debate whether the intense, almost obsessive focus on romantic love and personal affection in Elizabethan literature merely reflected an already burgeoning societal fascination with individual desire, a quiet revolution of the heart that was already underway. Or, conversely, if it actively fostered and even encouraged such desires, perhaps even subtly challenging the traditional, pragmatic views of marriage that had dominated for centuries. Did Shakespeare and his contemporaries, through their vivid portrayals of passion and longing, inadvertently ignite new flames of intense, individual love in the hearts of their audiences, urging them to seek personal fulfillment? Or did they merely hold a highly polished, exquisite mirror to existing ones, validating feelings that people already harbored in secret? You can almost hear the soft turning of a page, the gentle lilt of a voice reciting verse as these romantic whispers drift through the Elizabethan night, a timeless and beautiful testament to the enduring power of words to articulate the most intimate, often unexpressed, human longings. As your gentle historical drift continues, you encounter a fascinating, all-encompassing force that profoundly shaped Elizabethan views on desire, particularly at the highest levels of society, the enduring enigma of the Queen's virginity politics. Queen Elizabeth I, often celebrated and strategically positioned as the Virgin Queen, wielded her unmarried status not as a mere personal quirk or an unfortunate oversight, but as an incredibly shrewd and potent political tool. Imagine her, poised and powerful, her vibrant red hair a beacon, deliberately choosing to remain unwed despite constant immense pressure from her parliament, who clamored for an heir, and from a parade of eligible European suitors, each vying for her hand, and more importantly, her kingdom. This wasn't a mere personal preference or a matter of disinterest. It was a calculated, brilliant strategy to maintain domestic stability, prevent potentially ruinous power struggles among rival factions at court, and crucially, to avoid entangling England in complex, unpredictable foreign alliances that could arise from a dynastic marriage. Her body, in essence, became a powerful, living symbol of England's independent sovereignty, a testament to her nation's ability to stand alone. This meant that the very concept of desire, particularly for a woman in such an unparalleled position of power, was viewed through a truly unique and often contradictory lens. Elizabeth meticulously cultivated an image of herself as a devoted, almost spiritual mother to her nation, famously declaring herself married to my people rather than to any mortal man. This powerful, carefully constructed narrative subtly but profoundly influenced societal expectations about female desire, especially among the elite noblewomen and courtiers who orbited her. While common folk in the villages and towns might still pursue love, courtship, and marriage in their own more direct ways, the highest echelons of society constantly had the Queen's singular example, or rather, her strategic lack thereof, looming over them. It created a fascinating paradox, a society utterly obsessed with lineage, dynastic succession, and the imperative of procreation, yet led by a monarch who, through her own deliberate choice, defied those very fundamental expectations for profound political gain. The air at court was thick with unspoken tension between expectation and reality. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality, while a broad exploration of how power structures form and control discourses around sexuality over centuries, provides an excellent theoretical framework for understanding Elizabeth's actions. Elizabeth's deliberate construction and careful maintenance of her virgin image was a prime example of such a discursive formation, a powerful, sustained narrative that shaped public perception and, by extension, private behavior. By meticulously framing her unmarried state not as a weakness or an aberration, but as an extraordinary strength and a paramount virtue essential for England's security, she subtly but powerfully shifted the societal conversation about female sexuality, particularly at the highest, most influential levels. It wasn't about repression in the modern sense, in terms of denying physical urges. Rather, it was a strategic deployment of her sexuality, or indeed the strategic absence of it, as a highly effective tool to consolidate and maintain her immense power. You might find yourself pondering the unspoken, subtle pressure this unique situation placed on court ladies, who constantly had to balance their own burgeoning desires and prospects for marriage with the implicit messaging of their queen's powerful, unwavering celibacy. What message did their own marital status send in the shadow of such a powerful example? A truly quirky tidbit from the court of Elizabeth, one that highlights the fascinating contradictions of the era. Despite her fiercely guarded public image as the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth I was known to have intense, often deeply flirtatious, and undeniably emotionally charged relationships with her most favored male courtiers, most famously Robert Dudley, the handsome Earl of Leicester. These relationships were never, as far as history records, openly sexual, but they were undeniably deeply affectionate, emotionally intimate, and psychologically charged, sometimes even verging on passionate devotion. She kept these men exceptionally close to her, indulged their attentions, accepted their lavish gifts, and allowed them significant influence. But she steadfastly, unfailingly, never gave in to marriage. You might imagine her at a grand courtly ball, leading a complex dance, a knowing, perhaps slightly mischievous smile playing on her lips, perfectly aware of the unspoken desires swirling around her, yet maintaining an untouchable, regal distance that was both alluring and utterly impenetrable. It was a masterclass in controlled charisma, a delicate balance of engagement and aloofness. Historians still argue, with considerable fascination and ongoing debate, whether Elizabeth's profound virginity politics truly suppressed or significantly redirected courtly desire into other, less conventional channels, or if it merely made it more clandestine, more subtly expressed, and perhaps even more tantalizingly rebellious. Did her powerful, iconic example inspire a sense of patriotic restraint and self-sacrifice among her subjects, particularly those at court, urging them to put duty above personal longing? Or did it simply push passionate relationships and unspoken affections further into the hidden corners and discreet shadows of the Elizabethan court, making them more alluring by virtue of their secrecy? You can almost hear the soft rustle of her grand jeweled gowns, feel the symbolic weight of her crown, as you contemplate the extraordinary and utterly unique way one woman's deliberate, unwavering choice profoundly shaped an entire era's unspoken attitudes towards desire, power, and the very nature of human connection, leaving a lasting, quiet echo in the annals of history. As you continue your gentle descent into the quiet, often overlooked history of Elizabethan desire, let's turn our gaze from the glittering, highly scrutinized court and the grand estates to the bustling, often hidden lives of those below stairs, the servants' secret lives. While the lords and ladies above them navigated their intricate, often cold dances of formal courtship and pragmatically arranged marriages, the vast majority of Elizabethans, a truly significant portion of the population, were engaged in some form of service. This could range from working in grand, sprawling manor houses to toiling in bustling urban inns, to serving in smaller, more modest dwellings. And within these often cramped, communal, and intensely busy environments, desire, love, and intimacy found their own, often more direct, yet equally precarious expressions. Imagine yourself for a moment in such a setting. Perhaps you are a scullery maid, Your hands chapped from endless scrubbing of pots and pans, your days filled with the back-breaking labor of hauling water from the well and preparing meals from dawn till dusk. Or perhaps you are a stable hand, your muscles aching from mucking out stalls, grooming horses, and polishing harnesses. Despite the exhausting, relentless labor and the often strict, paternalistic household rules enforced by the master and mistress, young men and women lived in incredibly close quarters. They often shared sleeping spaces, ate their meals together, and spent nearly every waking moment in proximity. In such an environment, the fundamental human impulse for connection, for companionship, and yes, for physical intimacy was ever present, bubbling just beneath the surface of daily duties. Courtship among servants, you'll find, was far less formal and certainly less public than among the gentry. There were no elaborate dowries to haggle over, no complex political alliances to forge between families. Instead, relationships were often based on sheer proximity, shared experiences of hardship and camaraderie, and perhaps most importantly, genuine personal affection, though these nascent relationships always carried significant social risks. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, while predominantly focusing on the powerful and their often scandalous liaisons, subtly touches upon the underlying realities for the lower orders within these grand establishments. Her work highlights the often complex and unspoken power dynamics that existed between masters or mistresses and their servants. This imbalance could, unfortunately, sometimes lead to exploitation and abuse. However, it also, at times, led to genuine, albeit often hidden and socially precarious relationships. A master might take a mistress from among his household staff, a relationship that, depending on the master's disposition and the mistress's luck, could offer a semblance of security and status for a time, or conversely, lead to immediate dismissal and utter ruin if discovered by the master's wife. For servants of equal standing, however, the primary challenge was simply finding private moments away from the constant supervision and the lack of personal space. A stolen, hurried kiss in a dark pantry during a quiet moment, a whispered promise exchanged in the laundry yard after everyone else was asleep, or a quick, desperate embrace behind the barn, or in the shadowy corner of a deserted stable. These were their clandestine gardens, their hidden masks, their secret meeting places, brief respites from the watchful eye of the household. A truly quirky tidbit from this social strata, one that highlights the formal constraints even on personal life. It was not uncommon for servants to walk out with each other, a common phrase meaning they were courting or in a recognized relationship, but this often had to be done with the explicit permission of their employers. You might imagine a young footman nervously tidying his livery, having to formally approach his master or the formidable housekeeper to ask for leave to spend an evening walking or visiting with a kitchen maid from a neighboring estate, or even another servant within the same household. And sometimes, if a servant couple did wish to take the significant step of marrying, they would often have to leave their employment altogether. This was because most large, well-run households preferred unmarried servants, as married couples brought with them the complications of families, children, and a division of loyalties. This meant that genuine love and the desire for a settled life often came with a significant professional sacrifice, forcing couples to seek new employment or carve out an independent, often economically challenging existence. Historians still argue, with a thoughtful academic air, whether the intimate close quarters and the relatively informal nature of servant life, compared to the strictures of the gentry, inevitably led to more widespread casual relationships and less commitment, or if, conversely, the constant threat of dismissal, social ruin, and the economic precarity of their lives actually encouraged greater discretion, more profound seriousness, and a deeper sense of commitment in their romantic pursuits, knowing the high stakes involved. Did necessity truly make them more pragmatic and less sentimental about love, simply seeking companionship wherever it could be found? Or did it merely push their desires into deeper, more precarious hidden corners, making their affections even more cherished because they were hard-won? You can almost hear the quiet murmurs from the bustling servants' quarters in the late hours, the soft, furtive tread of bare feet on the wooden stairs in the dead of night, as these hidden stories of desire unfolded. They were far removed from the grand pronouncements of the powerful and unrecorded in noble genealogies, yet they were just as real, just as poignant, and just as deeply felt, a testament to the enduring human need for connection in every corner of society. As our sleepy journey continues its gentle meandering through the hidden byways of Elizabethan England, you find yourself drifting into the more public, yet still often discreet, spaces where desire sometimes found its rougher, less refined footing. The bustling taverns, inns, and brothels. These establishments, operating far from the formal strictures of the royal court or the rigid decorum of a grand manor house, offered a distinctly different kind of social interaction, a palpable loosening of inhibitions, and for some, an environment where romantic or more often, purely sexual encounters could be sought, sometimes openly and boisterously, sometimes with veiled intent and quiet desperation. Imagine for a moment stepping across the threshold of a bustling tavern in a busy town. The air inside is thick and heavy, laden with the pungent smell of stale ale that has soaked into the wooden floors, the savory aroma of roasting meat sizzling over an open fire, and the distinct earthy scent of unwashed bodies mingled with pipe smoke. Laughter, loud and uninhibited, spills from a corner where a group of apprentices are enjoying their evening. A lute plays a lively, perhaps slightly off-key tune in another, and the general hum of countless conversations creates a constant, enveloping din. Here, away from the watchful, judgmental eyes of family, the stern gaze of the local constable, and the strict societal codes that govern daily life, men and women might mingle with a surprising degree of freedom. A sailor, just returned from a long and arduous voyage, his pockets perhaps jingling with fresh wages, a traveling merchant seeking companionship on his lonely journey, or a local artisan unwinding after a long day's toil might find temporary solace, a fleeting connection, or even a more prolonged companionship for the evening. While these were not typically places for the blossoming of true love in the romantic sense, they certainly facilitated encounters born of loneliness, impulse, or a simple, primal desire for human connection. The often fine line between casual flirtation, boisterous camaraderie, and a more serious or intimate intent could easily be blurred by the consumption of a few too many flagons of strong sack or claret. While Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality broadens our understanding of how societies regulate, categorize, and even implicitly create spaces for sexual behaviors, even in periods of seeming repression, it highlights a crucial point, that certain spaces are implicitly or explicitly designated for the expression of desire that falls outside conventional, sanctioned norms. Taverns and inns, in this context, served as vital, semi-public arenas where a degree of social mixing, sometimes even across rigid class lines, was tolerated, if not entirely embraced. Brothels, on the other hand, though officially frowned upon, periodically subject to moralizing crackdowns, and often relegated to the seedier outskirts of urban centers, were nevertheless a persistent, if hidden, part of the urban landscape. They offered a direct, often purely transactional outlet for desire, primarily catering to men, but occasionally providing a desperate means of survival for women in dire circumstances. These were places where the often complex, time-consuming dance of Elizabethan courtship was stripped away, leaving only the raw, immediate exchange of money for physical intimacy. They existed as a stark, unromantic contrast to the ideals often espoused in literature, a truly quirky tidbit from this often raucous yet essential world. Many taverns and inns, particularly those catering to a more discerning or discreet clientele, had specific private rooms or chambers upstairs, not just for weary travelers seeking a night's rest, but quite often for discreet assignations and private meetings. You might imagine a secret staircase leading directly from a secluded back alley, or a cleverly disguised side entrance, allowing patrons to slip in and out unnoticed, minimizing the risk of public scandal or moral judgment. These establishments, often run by pragmatic and savvy innkeepers, understood the powerful, enduring demand for privacy in a world where gossip traveled faster than a galloping horse, and a ruined reputation could mean financial and social destitution. They subtly capitalized on the universal need for intimacy, providing a clandestine setting for desires that could not be openly acknowledged. Historians still argue with a certain quiet contemplation whether the pervasive presence and often tolerated existence of such establishments served as a necessary safety valve for societal pressures around desire, preventing more widespread moral decay or more aggressive forms of illicit behavior by offering a contained outlet, or if conversely, they simply contributed to a coarsening of public morals, creating a subculture of vice that undermined the very fabric of societal order. Did they fulfill a fundamental, inescapable human need for sexual expression that was otherwise relentlessly suppressed by strict religious and social codes, providing an essential, if unglamorous, service? Or did they merely exploit the vulnerable, preying on the lonely and the desperate? You can almost hear the distant clink of pewter tankards, the low, muffled murmur of voices engaged in private conversation, and the occasional burst of boisterous, unrestrained laughter echoing through the shadowed corridors, as these establishments played their often unacknowledged, yet undeniably significant role in the hidden corners of Elizabethan desire. They stand as a testament to the fact that fundamental human needs, no matter how rigorously repressed or officially condemned, always find an outlet, a place to manifest, even if it's in the quiet, sometimes seedy, shadows of history. As your gentle meander through Elizabethan society continues, and the soft historical hum lulls you deeper into contemplation, you stumble upon something truly fascinating, and sometimes, to our modern sensibilities, utterly unsettling: the realm of peculiar love remedies. In an age before the advent of modern scientific medicine, before the nuanced understanding of psychology, when the intense pangs of love, especially the agonizing ache of unrequited love, could feel like a debilitating, all-consuming illness, people often turn to all manner of strange concoctions, curious folk remedies, and deeply ingrained superstitious practices to either ignite desire in another or, conversely, to quell its torment within themselves. Imagine someone, perhaps a young woman hopelessly smitten with a local lad, secretly brewing a mysterious potion under the cover of night, hoping with all her heart that it would magically capture the fickle affections of her beloved. Or perhaps a lovesick gentleman, desperate to alleviate his torment, seeking out an old wise woman for a charm to make his yearning subside. These weren't just whimsical, isolated practices born of idle fancy. They were deeply rooted in a complex blend of ancient pagan beliefs, rudimentary medical theories inherited from classical antiquity, and above all, a profound and desperate hope. You might hear hushed whispers in the market square or in the quiet corners of a village about a potent love potion made from specific herbs gathered precisely under the light of a full moon, perhaps mixed with a single drop of the hopeful lover's blood, or a tiny, secretly acquired piece of the beloved's clothing, like a snippet of hair or a thread from their garment. Some believed, with unwavering conviction, that carrying certain charms, like a dried newt, yes, a newt, a peculiar stone, or a piece of lustrous amber, could genuinely make you more alluring and attractive to your desired partner. Others sought, not to ignite love, but to cure love sickness, a genuine, recognized affliction of the time, thought by Elizabethan physicians to cause deep melancholy, physical wasting, and even madness. The remedies for this torment ranged from truly bizarre concoctions, often involving potent emetics or purges, to more physically shocking treatments, like unexpected cold baths. It was a time when the heart's most profound and agonizing ailments were treated with concoctions and methods that would undoubtedly make a modern pharmacist faint in sheer disbelief. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, while primarily focused on the often scandalous power dynamics of royal desire and political alliances, implicitly touches upon these broader cultural beliefs and practices that permeated all levels of society. Even among the very highest echelons of royalty and nobility, superstitions and an unwavering belief in the efficacy of various remedies for love, fertility, or general attraction were rampant and widely accepted. A queen, desperate for an heir to secure her dynasty, might not only consult the most learned physicians, but also discreetly seek the counsel of an astrologer, ingest a specific potion believed to enhance fertility, or even wear a particular charm. This reflects a widespread cultural reliance on less scientific, more mystical or folk-based methods to influence matters of the heart and body, particularly when conventional means failed or were unavailable. The line between what was considered legitimate medicine, powerful magic, and sheer desperate hope was often incredibly blurred, especially when dealing with the enigmatic forces of human desire. A truly quirky tidbit from this world of peculiar remedies, one that might make you smile sleepily in disbelief. One particularly popular, albeit rather unappetizing, love charm involved a woman secretly baking a cake or a small pastry, lots into which she would knead or mix a small portion of her own nail clippings or even strands of her hair. The horrifyingly simple, yet deeply ingrained idea was that by ingesting a part of her, the man she desired would become irresistibly infatuated with her. You can only imagine the culinary challenges involved in making that concoction palatable, let alone convincing an unsuspecting individual to actually eat it without suspicion. It certainly makes a modern box of heart-shaped chocolates or a thoughtfully composed text message seem rather uninspired and remarkably straightforward, doesn't it? The lengths to which people would go for love, even if it involved consuming personal detritus, were astonishing. Historians still argue, with a thoughtful, ongoing scholarly debate, whether the widespread belief in these peculiar remedies genuinely influenced emotional outcomes through a powerful placebo effect, where the belief in the cure itself brought about a change, or if they primarily served as a profound psychological comfort in a world where personal agency in matters of love and destiny was often severely limited by social class, family dictates, and economic necessity. Did these strange, often gross practices truly spark or extinguish passion, altering the course of a relationship? Or were they simply a poignant testament to the enduring human desire for control over the seemingly uncontrollable, tumultuous forces of the heart, a way to feel proactive in a world where one often felt powerless? You can almost smell the faint, odd aromas of bitter herbs and damp earth, hear the whispered incantations in a dimly lit cottage, as these peculiar love remedies played their often secret, desperate part in the hidden corners of Elizabethan desire, a timeless and sometimes unsettling reminder of the profound lengths to which people would go and the strange beliefs they would embrace, all for the elusive promise of love and connection. As your consciousness continues to gently drift through the soft historical mists of Elizabethan England, we arrive at a particularly sensitive, profoundly distressing, and often scandalous aspect of desire: pregnancy's scandalous reveal. In a society where legitimacy, lineage, and the purity of the family line were not merely important but absolutely paramount, the very bedrock of social order and property inheritance, an unacknowledged pregnancy outside of marriage was not merely a personal misfortune for the woman involved. Instead, it was an overwhelming, often catastrophic social and economic disaster, not only for her, but frequently for her entire family, dragging them all into disrepute. Imagine, if you can, the sheer paralyzing fear, the churning desperation that would grip a young woman upon discovering she was with child, knowing full well the devastating, far-reaching consequences that lay ahead if her condition, her secret, became known to the unforgiving world around her. The shame and social ostracism attached to illegitimacy during this era were immense, almost unimaginable to our modern minds. A woman found to be pregnant out of wedlock faced public humiliation that could scar her for life, severe legal and moral punishment, which could gruesomely include being publicly whipped through the streets, branded with a hot iron, or forced to perform grueling public penance in church, often while dressed in a white sheet to denote her sin. In addition to these physical and emotional torments, she would often face utter ruin. She might be cast out by her family, losing her only support system, lose her precious employment, and find herself utterly destitute, forced into vagrancy or worse. For the father, on the other hand, while he might indeed face some legal repercussions or be ordered to pay fines for the child's upkeep, the social stigma he endured was considerably, almost shockingly, less severe. This stark disparity painfully highlights the entrenched gender inequality of the era, where a woman's body and reproductive capacity were infinitely more scrutinized and controlled than a man's. This immense pressure, this terrifying specter of ruin, inevitably led to desperate and dangerous measures to hide pregnancies, often with tragic and fatal results. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality provides an incredibly critical and illuminating lens through which to understand these dynamics. His work demonstrates how societies meticulously construct complex power dynamics around sexuality and reproduction, using them as mechanisms of control. In Elizabethan England, the pervasive and often brutal control over women's bodies, particularly their reproductive capacity, was a key fundamental mechanism of maintaining social order, reinforcing hierarchies, and ensuring the smooth, uncontested transfer of property and titles. The severe legal and social penalties for illegitimate births were not just about abstract morality or religious piety. They were deeply rooted in practical concerns, maintaining clear property lines, ensuring undisputed inheritances, and regulating the flow of labor within a tightly structured society. The entire system was designed to ensure that sexual activity, especially for women, was tightly bound to the institution of marriage and its sanctioned, legitimate outcomes. You can almost feel the suffocating weight of this societal pressure, a heavy, invisible blanket pressing down on any illicit desire, any unsanctioned flutter of the heart that might lead to such a devastating consequence. A quirky, yet ineffably sad tidbit from this period underscores the desperation. Some women, consumed by terror and fearing the brutal consequences of exposure, resorted to incredibly dangerous methods to conceal their burgeoning bellies. This included tightly binding their torsos with belly bands, or using specially constructed, tightly laced bodices designed to compress their pregnant forms for as long as humanly possible, often at great risk to their own health and the life of the unborn child. Others, in an even more desperate attempt to avoid the horrific public shaming and ruin, might try to induce miscarriages using dangerous folk remedies, concoctions passed in hushed tones, often with tragic, fatal results for themselves or the innocent child they carried. The sheer, overwhelming terror of exposure, of public disgrace and utter destitution drove individuals to these extreme, life-threatening measures, highlighting the immense and terrifying stakes involved in any act of unapproved desire that resulted in conception. Historians still argue, with a somber academic tone, whether the extreme harshness of the punishments meted out for illegitimate births genuinely deterred illicit sexual activity across society, preventing it from becoming more widespread and overt. Or if, conversely, these brutal penalties simply drove such activities further underground, forcing them into even more dangerous, secretive, and desperate practices, making the consequences even more dire when discovered. Did the pervasive fear of scandal and public disgrace truly enforce a rigid moral order, instilling virtue through terror? Or did it merely create a pervasive climate of fear, desperation, and untold suffering for those whose desires or whose circumstances strayed from the narrow, sanctioned path of marriage and legitimate procreation? You can almost hear the whispered rumors spreading like wildfire through a village, the rustle of straw as someone is led, broken and shamed, to public penance, as you contemplate the devastating personal cost of unacknowledged desire in a world where secrets, especially those carried in the womb, could not, and often did not, stay buried forever, ultimately shaping the most hidden corners of Elizabethan life with sorrow and fear. As you continue to quietly observe Elizabethan life, with its layers of formality and hidden undercurrents, another intriguing and often surprising aspect of desire comes into sharp focus: the pervasive nature of bawdy humor and hidden jokes. In a society that, on the surface, presented a meticulous facade of strict moral rectitude, particularly concerning sexual matters and public decorum, the irrepressible undercurrent of human nature found a clever and often surprisingly crude outlet in wit, subtle double entendres, and remarkably frank jokes. Imagine yourself, if you will, seated in a noisy, smoky alehouse, the air thick with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of tankards. Or perhaps you're at a seemingly polite and proper social gathering in a merchant's home. You might suddenly catch snippets of conversation, fragments of rhymes, or quick exchanges filled with hidden meanings, perfectly understood by those in the know, yet flying completely over the heads of the uninitiated or the more naive. This wasn't just idle chatter or frivolous amusement. It was a deeply ingrained cultural practice, a clandestine way of subtly acknowledging, even playfully celebrating, human desire and sexuality in a world where direct, open expression was often strictly forbidden or heavily censured. William Shakespeare, once again, stands as the prime example of this phenomenon, a true master of weaving such wit into his works. His celebrated plays are absolutely rife with sexual puns, clever innuendo, and outright bawdy jokes that would have delighted his groundlings, the standing audience members in the pit, and prompted knowing chuckles from the more refined patrons in the galleries. Think of lines that, to a modern ear, might sound utterly innocent or merely poetic, but to an Elizabethan audience, acutely attuned to such nuances, packed a wonderfully suggestive punch. The seemingly innocuous word nothing, for instance, could be a sly and widely recognized reference to female genitalia, leading to entirely new, risque interpretations of phrases like much ado about nothing. This linguistic cleverness allowed for a playful, often humorous, yet pervasive engagement with sexuality without overtly challenging the powerful moral codes imposed by the church and state. It was a societal wink and nudge. Peter Webb's The Erotic Spirit Through History offers invaluable insight into how humor, satire, and playful language often serve as a vital release valve for societal pressures around the expression of desire. When overt, direct expression is stifled, when conversations about intimacy are deemed taboo, the erotic energy doesn't simply disappear. Instead, it finds its way into jokes, into popular songs, into folklore, and into the very fabric of everyday conversation, albeit in a veiled form. In Elizabethan England, the widespread use of euphemisms, clever metaphors, and highly specific slang for sexual acts meant that conversations could be conducted on two distinct levels simultaneously. One level was outwardly respectable, proper, and seemingly innocent, while the other was subtly, even deliciously, ribald and suggestive. This shared, almost secret understanding of hidden meanings created a profound sense of camaraderie among those who were in on the joke, a quiet, knowing intimacy, and perhaps even a subtle, collective rebellion against the prevailing puritanical leanings that sought to suppress such natural human impulses. A truly quirky tidbit from this humorous realm, one that might make you smile sleepily as you picture it. Many popular folk songs and ballads of the time, seemingly innocent and charming on the surface, were actually filled with incredibly explicit sexual metaphors and thinly veiled references. A song about a shepherd milking his ewes or a maiden gathering nuts in May could, to the knowing ear of an Elizabethan listener, convey far more suggestive and salacious imagery than its literal translation would imply. You might hear such a song performed with a sweet lilting melody at a bustling village fair or a quiet harvest festival, its tune utterly charming, its lyrics slyly scandalous, making you wonder just how much was truly innocent or naive in the collective Elizabethan mind, and how much was a shared, unspoken acknowledgement of life's more carnal delights. It speaks volumes about the human need for both expression and diversion. Historians still argue, with a certain quiet fascination, whether this pervasive prevalence of bawdy humor and sexual innuendo truly indicated a deeper, more widespread societal acceptance of sexuality beneath the outward piety and moralizing sermons, or if, conversely, it merely served as a harmless, necessary outlet for deeply repressed desires that couldn't find a more direct, sanctioned form of expression, acting as a crucial safety valve for a society under immense moral pressure. Did these hidden jokes, these linguistic games, foster a more relaxed and open attitude towards intimacy and the human body over time, subtly eroding the stricter moral boundaries? Or were they simply a clever coping mechanism, a way to navigate and survive under the strict moral codes that governed every aspect of public and private life, allowing people to acknowledge their desires without overtly challenging the powerful authorities? You can almost hear the quiet snickers, the knowing glances exchanged across a crowded room, as these clever, often crude, yet undeniably human jokes ripple through Elizabethan society, a constant, low hum beneath the surface. It's a testament to the enduring human capacity for finding humor and connection in the most universal and often forbidden aspects of life, proving that even in the strictest eras, the spirit of playful rebellion, especially in matters of the heart and body, always finds a way to manifest. As you continue to quietly observe Elizabethan society, allowing the gentle historical currents to carry your imagination, you now encounter a fascinating, often ambiguous relationship dynamic that existed beyond the rigid boundaries of formal courtship and sanctioned marriage. the peculiar and often nuanced world of sweethearts. This term, unlike our modern, often highly specific understanding of a committed romantic partner, held a broader, more fluid, and often less defined meaning in Elizabethan England. Imagine a young man and a young woman, perhaps from different social strata but drawn to each other, exchanging small, thoughtful gifts or spending seemingly innocent time together in public settings. Their relationship existing in a delicate, unspoken space somewhere between casual acquaintance and formal, marriage-bound courtship. It was a hidden corner of nascent desire, a quiet understanding. A sweetheart could be many things. A casual romantic interest with no firm future plans, a platonic confidant with whom one shared emotional intimacy, or someone with whom a discreet, enjoyable flirtation was maintained, sometimes even alongside a more serious, prearranged, and economically practical courtship with another person. It was, crucially, a social space for emotional connection that wasn't necessarily leading directly to marriage, or at least not yet, and certainly not with the public declaration and binding contracts that accompanied formal betrothal. You might observe a gentlewoman receiving a small, exquisitely embroidered purse from a gentleman who was clearly not her official suitor, or a young man receiving a carefully penned poem from a lady who would never be his wife. These were gestures that signaled a special, perhaps unspoken affection, a mutual regard that transcended mere friendship. These sweetheart relationships offered a softer, less binding, and less public form of intimacy, allowing for emotional exploration and companionship without the heavy societal expectations, the intense financial negotiations, or the stringent family pressures that always accompanied a formal betrothal. It was a little pocket of freedom within a highly structured world. While Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality primarily examines the historical construction and societal regulation of sexual norms, he also touches upon the inherent fluidity and diverse forms of social relationships that have always existed outside rigidly defined categories. The concept of sweethearts in Elizabethan England serves as a perfect demonstration of this fluidity. It was a subtle, yet widely understood social convention that allowed for certain emotional and even, at times, light physical intimacy, like holding hands or a chaste kiss, without immediately triggering the full implications and binding commitments of formal courtship or marriage. It created a fascinating gray area, a semi-sanctioned, semi-private space for individuals to explore mutual attraction, shared interests, or simple companionship in ways that might have otherwise been deemed highly inappropriate or scandalous if they were openly labeled lovers or fiancés. It was a delicate, unspoken dance of ambiguity, where intentions could remain delightfully vague, allowing for connection without immediate, overwhelming obligation. A truly quirky tidbit from this realm of informal affection, one that adds a touch of charming intimacy: poesies, or posy rings. These were small, slender rings, often made of gold or silver, upon which a short, often romantic or sentimental verse was engraved. These rings were incredibly popular tokens exchanged between sweethearts. Crucially, these weren't necessarily engagement rings, which carried immense legal and financial weight. Instead, they were more informal symbols of affection, friendship, and unspoken bonds. They often bore tender sentiments like "love me and leave me not," "my heart and I," "let love increase," or "as gold is pure, so love is true." Imagine for a moment the quiet thrill of receiving such a ring, a tiny, personal promise of affection, not a public declaration of intent to marry, but a private testament to a special, cherished bond, a secret little whisper of connection worn close to the heart. It's a beautifully understated form of romantic communication. Historians still argue, with a certain quiet contemplation, whether the prevalence of these sweetheart relationships truly provided a valuable and much-needed outlet for genuine emotional connection and personal affection in a society so heavily dominated by pragmatic, often loveless, arranged marriages. Did they offer a true sanctuary for the heart to explore its inclinations more freely? Or if, conversely, they often led to heartbreak, confusion, and significant social complications when unspoken expectations diverged, or when a sweetheart moved on to a more advantageous formal match? Did these ambiguous relationships offer a genuine, albeit limited freedom in matters of the heart, allowing individuals to experience affection without the crushing weight of formal obligation? Or did they merely create a confusing, emotionally precarious space where desires could be indulged without true binding commitment, leaving one party vulnerable? You can almost hear the soft whispers of unspoken promises, the gentle, almost imperceptible clinking of a small engraved token of affection, as these delicate, often ephemeral bonds formed and sometimes dissolved in the hidden corners of Elizabethan desire. They stand as a quiet yet powerful testament to the enduring human need for emotional connection and companionship, a desire that consistently sought and found ways to express itself even beyond the strictly defined lines of sanctioned society. As you continue your soft, sleepy journey through Elizabethan perceptions, allowing your mind to drift back through the centuries, you'll encounter a truly fascinating, if somewhat unsettling, medical perspective on intense emotional states. How physicians and melancholic love intertwined. In this age, long before the advent of modern scientific medicine and the nuanced understanding of psychology we possess today, the overwhelming, all-consuming feelings associated with deep love, particularly if it was unrequited, forbidden, or simply tumultuous, weren't just seen as profound emotional experiences. Instead, they were often classified as a genuine, diagnosable medical ailment, a specific form of melancholy. Imagine, if you can, a young lover, perhaps pining away for an unattainable beloved, experiencing sleepless nights, a profound loss of appetite, and a general wasting away, genuinely being brought before a learned physician and solemnly diagnosed with love sickness, as if it were a fever or a plague. This intriguing medical understanding was deeply rooted in the prevailing medical theories of the time, primarily the ancient and pervasive theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. An imbalance of black bile, the humor specifically associated with melancholy, was believed to cause a wide range of symptoms, including profound sadness, obsessive thoughts that would replay endlessly in the mind, a noticeable loss of vitality, and even physical deterioration. So, if you were consumed by thoughts of your beloved, if their image haunted your waking hours and stole your sleep, if you found yourself unable to eat and grew weak and pale, a doctor of the Elizabethan era wouldn't simply suggest you get over it. Instead, he might indeed prescribe various remedies specifically designed to rebalance your humors, to restore the delicate internal equilibrium that was believed to govern both physical and emotional health. These remedies could be quite drastic, even by their standards, ranging from violent purges and often painful bloodletting to literally remove the excess humors, to strange, often foul-tasting herbal concoctions designed to cool an overactive, inflamed heart or warm a despondent, chilled spirit. It was a holistic, if largely misguided approach to romantic suffering, treating the emotional as a physical imbalance. While Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality doesn't specifically delve into the minutiae of Elizabethan medical practices, his foundational work provides a crucial theoretical framework for understanding how medical discourse itself becomes a powerful means of societal control and categorization of human experience, including the often unruly domain of desire. By pathologizing intense love, by labeling it as a distinct form of illness, Elizabethan physicians, often unknowingly or implicitly, played a significant role in regulating and subtly policing emotional expression. It subtly reinforced the pervasive societal idea that uncontrollable fervent passion could be dangerous, disruptive, and even physically unhealthy, thus nudging individuals towards more measured, more rational, and ultimately, more sanctioned forms of affection and attachment within the strictures of society. You can almost feel the cool, perhaps slightly clammy chill of a physician's hand resting on a fevered brow, meticulously counting a rapid pulse, before solemnly prescribing something that would taste dreadful and likely cause discomfort, all in the solemn name of curing the afflicted heart. The authority of medicine lent weight to social norms, a truly quirky tidbit from this medical perspective, one that might make you offer a sleepy chuckle. Some Elizabethan physicians, in their earnest attempts to understand and treat love sickness, genuinely believed that excessive, prolonged contemplation of the beloved could literally dry up a person's vital fluids and sap their life force. Therefore, They might prescribe a range of activities specifically designed to distract the lovesick individual, to break their obsessive focus. These prescriptions could include rigorous physical exercise, forced travel to new and unfamiliar places, or even compulsory exposure to unpleasant or tedious company, all in a desperate attempt to snap the patient out of their debilitating romantic obsession and restore their humoral balance. Imagine your doctor, with a serious expression, prescribing a long, arduous walk in the cold mud, or mandatory conversations with your most grumpy and dull neighbor, all as a cure for your aching heartache. It highlights the vast difference in medical understanding compared to today. Historians still argue, with a certain quiet contemplation, whether the medicalization of love in Elizabethan England truly provided a legitimate, albeit flawed, framework for understanding and addressing intense emotional states, perhaps offering a crude form of therapeutic intervention that gave sufferers a tangible diagnosis and a course of action. Or if conversely, it primarily served to delegitimize powerful personal feelings and profound emotional experiences by labeling them as mere illness, thereby reinforcing societal pressure to conform to less passionate, more rational, and ultimately more controllable forms of attachment. Did this medical approach offer genuine solace and a path to recovery for the lovesick, providing a societal space for their suffering? Or did it merely reinforce the dominant cultural narrative that powerful individual passion was something to be feared, controlled, and even cured, rather than embraced? You can almost hear the soft rustle of aged medical treatises, the low, serious murmur of a doctor's grave diagnosis echoing in a quiet room, as these peculiar attempts to treat the heart's deepest, most enigmatic longings played out in the hidden corners of Elizabethan desire, a timeless testament to the enduring human struggle to comprehend, manage, and ultimately survive the overwhelming, sometimes debilitating force of love. As you continue your gentle descent into the quiet whispers of Elizabethan belief, your imagination settling into the intricate fabric of daily life, you encounter another intriguing and deeply human aspect of how people sought to influence matters of the heart: the pervasive and often desperate role of magic, charms, and desire. In an era where scientific understanding, as we know it today, was still rudimentary, where the natural world often felt much more mysterious and imbued with unseen forces, and where the boundaries between the sacred and the profane were less distinct, people frequently turned to the supernatural to ignite passion, to secure enduring loyalty, or even, in darker moments, to inflict romantic misfortune upon a rival. Imagine, for a moment, a young woman, perhaps heartbroken or hopelessly smitten, secretly consulting a village-wise woman under the cloak of twilight, seeking a potent love charm. Or picture a jilted lover, consumed by bitterness, muttering ancient incantations under a darkened, moonless sky, hoping to bind a former partner or curse a new rival. This reliance on magic wasn't necessarily seen as dark, forbidden witchcraft by everyone, at least not in the sense that might immediately spring to a modern mind. Often, it was simply an extension of long-held folk beliefs and traditional practices, a practical way to exert some semblance of control over the unpredictable and often overwhelming forces of attraction and human emotion. You might hear hushed whispers of someone carrying a piece of a mandrake root, believed to possess powerful aphrodisiac qualities and enhance fertility, or using specific herbs gathered at a precise astrological moment to brew a potent philtre, a love potion designed to compel someone to fall deeply in love. Some believed, with unwavering conviction, that drawing specific arcane symbols on a piece of parchment, or reciting particular verses or rhyming spells at a specific hour of the day or night, could magically bind a lover to you, ensuring their fidelity and devotion. These pervasive practices, passed down through generations, reveal a deep-seated and universal human desire to influence destiny, to control the uncontrollable, especially in the volatile and often bewildering realm of the heart, where emotions could be so overwhelming, irrational, and seemingly beyond personal agency. Peter Webb's The Erotic Spirit Through History offers profound insights into how the complex pursuit of desire has often intersected with mystical and magical beliefs across vastly different cultures and historical eras. In Elizabethan England, with its fascinating blend of lingering pagan traditions that predated Christianity, the slow but emerging tenets of scientific thought, and the increasingly strong, often moralizing Christian doctrine, the boundaries between what was considered sacred, what was merely superstitious, and what was simply mundane reality were often fluid, permeable, and hotly debated. Magic, particularly in matters of love, provided a powerful sense of agency, a desperate hope to those who felt powerless in their romantic lives, offering the tantalizing possibility that unseen, supernatural forces could be harnessed and directed to achieve their most cherished romantic aims. It was a testament to the enduring human belief in the extraordinary, a persistent yearning for intervention when logic and direct action seemed to fail. It was a world where unseen forces felt very real and very close at hand, a truly quirky tidbit from this magical realm, one that might charm you in its simplicity, the widespread use of love knots, made of ribbons or hair. These weren't just pretty, decorative trinkets exchanged as symbols of affection. They were genuinely believed to physically and spiritually bind two people together in love. You might receive a delicately braided knot, perhaps woven with strands of your beloved's hair, intertwined with threads representing both your initials, believing it held a potent magical power to secure their affections and ensure your mutual devotion. It's certainly a more tactile, deeply personal, and perhaps more whimsically romantic form of symbolic engagement than a modern online dating profile or a simple text message, isn't it? It speaks to a different kind of connection, one rooted in tangible, magical intent. Historians still argue, with a thoughtful academic air, whether the widespread use and belief in love magic truly influenced romantic outcomes through a powerful psychological suggestion or a self-fulfilling prophecy, the placebo effect, if you will, where the belief itself brought about the desired change, or if it simply offered a crucial sense of comfort, hope, and control to individuals facing profound uncertainty and heartbreak in their relationships, providing a narrative for their often inexplicable emotional turmoil. Did these charms and spells truly ignite passion and bind hearts, altering the course of romantic destinies? Or were they merely a profound reflection of a society grappling, often desperately, with the powerful, often irrational, and universally acknowledged forces of human desire, seeking any means, rational or supernatural, to understand and influence them? You can almost smell the faint, earthy scent of dried herbs, perhaps a hint of sulfur or rosewater, hear the whispered words of ancient, half-forgotten spells echoing in a dimly lit room, as these peculiar beliefs and desperate practices played their part in the hidden, mystical corners of Elizabethan desire. A quiet, yet powerful, testament to the enduring human quest to understand and perhaps to influence the enigmatic, unpredictable heart. As your journey nears its quiet close and the soft, historical light of Elizabethan England begins to dim around you, you approach a darker, more cautionary, and often heartbreaking aspect of desire, the dark side of passion. When love, or what often merely masqueraded as it, veered sharply and tragically from the sanctioned, accepted path, the consequences for individuals and families could be absolutely devastating, leading to profound scandal, bitter betrayal, and, in the most extreme cases, even violent crime. Imagine, if you will, the chilling whispers that would ripple through a tight-knit community upon the announcement of a broken engagement, the public shaming and utter ruin of a secret, illicit affair finally revealed, or the chilling tales of jealousy and possessiveness spiraling uncontrollably into acts of brutal violence. These grim realities were a stark counterpoint to the romantic ideals often depicted in poetry. In a society that placed such an incredibly high premium on honor, on an unblemished reputation, and crucially, on the unimpeachable legitimacy of lineage and property, the transgression of sexual norms or social boundaries could lead to profound personal and social ruin that was almost impossible to recover from. An illicit affair, particularly if discovered and exposed to the unforgiving gaze of the public, could destroy a woman's standing entirely, rendering her unmarriageable, an outcast, and often destitute with nowhere to turn. For a man, while perhaps less socially catastrophic and rarely leading to complete destitution, such an affair could still significantly damage his reputation, lead to substantial fines or even imprisonment, especially if the affair crossed rigid class lines or, more damningly, involved a married woman, thus infringing upon another man's property rights. The betrayal of sacred marital vows was considered a grave offense, one often brought before the formidable ecclesiastical courts, which possessed the power to impose harsh public penance, compel confessions, or demand hefty financial fines. The stakes for indulging in forbidden desires, for allowing passion to lead one astray, were incredibly, terrifyingly high, a constant sword of Damocles hanging over any unsanctioned liaison. Eleanor Herman's Sex with Kings, with its unflinching look at the lives of royalty and their often tumultuous personal lives, provides numerous vivid examples of how unchecked desire, particularly among the powerful who felt themselves above common law, could lead to dramatic downfalls, intricate conspiracies, and even, horrifyingly, to murder. While her primary focus is on the monarchs and their courtiers, the fundamental human impulses for intense jealousy, vengeful retribution, and desperate measures to conceal illicit relationships or their devastating consequences permeated all levels of society, from the highest lord to the humblest peasant. A jilted lover, scorned and humiliated, might resort to vicious slander and public defamation to ruin their former beloved's name. A betrayed husband, consumed by rage, might seek violent retribution against his wife's lover, or even against his wife herself. And tragically, a woman, driven to utter despair by her impossible circumstances and the terrifying specter of public shame, might commit the unthinkable act of infanticide to hide an illegitimate birth, a horrific yet understandable consequence of extreme, unforgiving societal pressure. These stories, though undeniably grim and unsettling, highlight the profound, often destructive intensity of emotions that arose when desire was thwarted, betrayed, or tragically misdirected within the rigid confines of Elizabethan society. A truly quirky tidbit, one that illustrates the darker, almost magical lengths people would go to for revenge in matters of the heart, involves the creation of effigies, or small, crude dolls. These dolls, painstakingly made to resemble a former lover or a romantic rival, were sometimes subjected to symbolic torture, pins stuck into them, limbs twisted, believed to cause real pain, misfortune, or even illness to the actual person they represented. You might hear hushed, fearful tales whispered in the darkest corners of a village, stories of a scorned woman or a rejected suitor, meticulously sticking pins into a wax figure, muttering dark curses under their breath, hoping to inflict suffering or even death upon the one who betrayed or spurned them. It was a dark, desperate, and ultimately superstitious outlet for immense emotional pain, rage, and a profound sense of powerlessness, highlighting how raw feelings, when denied healthy expression, could turn to malevolent, hidden practices. Historians still argue, with a certain quiet gravity, whether the brutal and seemingly uncompromising harshness of the consequences for illicit desire genuinely maintained social order by instilling a pervasive fear that outweighed passion, thus preventing more widespread moral decay, or if, conversely, these severe threats merely pushed such transgressions in illicit relationships further into the shadows, making them inherently more dangerous, more desperate, and more fraught with peril for those involved. Did the constant, terrifying threat of public ruin truly curb passionate impulses and illicit activities, forcing people into chastity and obedience? Or did it simply make those who dared to stray more cunning, more ruthless, and more adept at deception, living a double life filled with constant anxiety? You can almost feel the chilling weight of a whispered accusation in a bustling marketplace, the palpable tension of a terrible secret about to burst into the open, as these dark, hidden facets of Elizabethan desire unfold before your mind's eye. It's a stark, enduring reminder that the human heart, when pushed to its absolute limits by societal strictures and intense personal feelings, can lead to both profound love and equally profound, devastating despair. As our gentle exploration of Elizabethan desire draws to its quiet close, leaving behind the rich tapestries and bustling streets, you arrive at a profound, timeless truth, the enduring echoes of human longing. Despite the intricate and often rigid social strictures, the overwhelming economic considerations that dictated so much of life, the stern moral and religious codes, and the often harsh realities of the era, the fundamental human impulse for connection, for intimacy, and for love persisted, finding myriad ways to express itself. Imagine, Even now, the soft, persistent hum of those ancient desires resonating through the centuries, a quiet melody reaching you across the vast expanse of time. Elizabethan England, with all its unique complexities, its paradoxes of outward piety and hidden passions, was truly a crucible for human emotion. Whether it was subtly conveyed through coded messages hidden within the lines of a courtly mask, whispered through the intricate, symbolic language of fashion, expressed in the desperate hope of a love charm concocted in secret, or brought vividly to life by the raw passion depicted on Shakespeare's vibrant stage, individuals found countless, ingenious ways to express, pursue, and grapple with desire in all its forms. The cold calculus of a dowry might have dictated the precise terms of a formal match, but the human heart, ever resilient and often rebellious, frequently sought its own path, sometimes in outright defiance of societal norms, sometimes in carefully guarded secrecy, and sometimes, surprisingly, finding quiet contentment and unexpected affection within the very bonds that societal expectations and economic necessity had initially forged. It was a testament to the adaptability of the human spirit. Think for a moment of the powerful legacy that this era has left us. The timeless stories of love and profound loss that continue to resonate deeply in our literature, from classic plays to modern adaptations. Consider the very language we still use today to speak of affection, of longing, of heartbreak, much of it forged or popularized during this period. Reflect on our enduring fascination with an era that, despite its profound differences from our own, nevertheless mirrors so many of our own universal human struggles and triumphs in matters of the heart. The Elizabethan world, far from being a cold, pragmatic landscape devoid of genuine emotion, was a vibrant, intricate tapestry, richly woven with threads of deep affection, fervent longing, quiet despair, and undeniable, often defiant passion, much of it hidden in plain sight, waiting for a discerning eye to uncover it. So, as we gently pull back from the Elizabethan world, allowing its muddy streets, its grand, echoing courts, its secret gardens, and its bustling taverns to recede into the quiet depths of history, what have we truly discovered about the multifaceted nature of desire during this fascinating period? We've seen that Elizabethan desire was anything but a monolithic or simple experience. Instead, it was a complex, dynamic force, profoundly shaped and influenced by a confluence of powerful factors. Social hierarchy. Who you were, where you stood within the rigid, almost unyielding social strata of Elizabethan society, dramatically influenced your romantic prospects, the available pool of potential partners, and the acceptable, often limited, forms of expressing affection. A peasant's courtship differed wildly from a noble's. Economic pragmatism. The cold, hard realities of finance, specifically the size of a dowry and the intricacies of inheritance, often trumped personal preference, genuine affection, and individual choice in the negotiation of marriages, particularly among the wealthy and land-owning classes. Love often had a way of finding a way to thrive despite these economic realities, not because of them. Moral and religious codes. The pervasive influence of strict Christian morality, particularly the growing power of puritanical leanings, heavily influenced public behavior and perceptions of sexuality. This often pushed certain expressions of desire, particularly those deemed illicit or impure, into clandestine corners, forcing them into secrecy and silence. Cultural expression. In a society where direct emotional displays were often curbed, art, literature, especially the explosion of love poetry and Shakespearean drama, fashion, and even shared bawdy humor became incredibly sophisticated and nuanced vehicles for conveying feelings and passions that could not be spoken aloud without fear of censure. Personal agency. Perhaps most remarkably, despite all the formidable external pressures, the strict social norms, the economic imperatives, the moral dictates, and the constant scrutiny, the fundamental human heart continually sought and often found ingenious ways to express itself. Sometimes this was subtle, sometimes it was defiantly overt, sometimes it blossomed in hidden secrecy, and sometimes, surprisingly, individuals found profound, quiet contentment and deep affection within the very bonds that societal norms and pragmatic considerations had initially forged for them. This enduring search for connection is a testament to the human spirit. The Elizabethan era, viewed through this lens of desire, serves as a powerful reminder that while the outward forms, the specific customs, and the rigid societal rules surrounding love and intimacy may change dramatically across the vast expanse of time, the core human experience of longing, of seeking profound connection, of feeling desire in all its beautiful, complicated, sometimes dark, and always compelling facets remains remarkably constant. We might swipe right on a digital screen today, seeking a fleeting connection or a lifelong partner, but the fundamental dance of attraction, the profound hope for intimacy, the fear of rejection, and the heartbreak of loss are all deeply rooted echoes from centuries past, vibrations from the Elizabethan heart that still resonate within our own. As our gentle historical journey through Elizabethan desire moves towards its complete illumination, it's crucial to cast our gaze upon those whose desires were not only hidden, but often actively suppressed or deemed unspeakable, the marginalized and their unspoken longings. Beyond the courtly love, the arranged marriages, and even the bawdy humor of taverns, existed a complex tapestry of individuals whose romantic and sexual lives defied the strict norms of the era. Imagine the silent struggles of those whose identities or attractions placed them at the very edge of, or entirely outside, accepted society. This section acknowledges the difficulty historians face in uncovering these lives. Records are scarce, often biased, and frequently only appear when individuals face punishment or condemnation. Yet, whispers of same-sex attraction, gender nonconformity, and other forms of desire that didn't fit the heterosexual, procreative mold can be found in court documents, satirical pamphlets, and even coded literary references. The very absence of overt discussion speaks volumes about the societal pressure to conform. For these individuals, expressing desire could mean not just social ruin, but physical danger, imprisonment, or even execution. Their longing was forced into the deepest shadows, often remaining entirely within the confines of their own hearts and minds. Michel Foucault's The History of Sexuality is particularly relevant here, reminding us that the categories and prohibitions around sexuality are historically constructed. While Foucault argues that homosexuality as a defined identity didn't exist in the same way it does today, same-sex acts and attractions were certainly recognized and condemned. The legal and moral frameworks of Elizabethan England actively criminalized sodomy, often viewing it through a theological lens as a sin against nature. This punitive environment meant that any desire deviating from the norm was either driven underground or utterly repressed, fostering a climate of fear and secrecy. A particularly poignant, though rare historical tidbit surfaces in the form of certain court records or pamphlets describing individuals who might today be understood as gender nonconforming or trans, cross-dressing for reasons that went beyond disguise for crime. While most instances of cross-dressing were for theatrical purposes or criminal evasion, some anecdotal accounts hint at deeper personal motivations related to identity and attraction. These glimpses, however fleeting, suggest that the diversity of human desire extended far beyond the heterosexual framework, even if unspoken or punished. Historians still grapple with the ethical challenge of interpreting these fragmented records. Did the extreme societal repression truly eliminate or merely render invisible the multifaceted desires of the marginalized? Did the fear of condemnation force these individuals into lives of profound loneliness, or did it foster secret communities and hidden networks of support? You can almost feel the weight of untold stories, the silent yearning of hearts that dared not speak their names, as you contemplate these most vulnerable facets of Elizabethan desire. This section is a somber reminder of the human cost when society refuses to acknowledge or tolerate the full spectrum of love and attraction. As our contemplation of Elizabethan desire gently concludes, the rich tapestry of human yearning begins to softly recede, allowing us to simply rest within the quiet afterglow of discovery. We have traversed through a vibrant landscape of hidden courtships and grand public displays, of societal expectations and the rebellious whispers of the heart, of strictures that bound and passions that yearned to break free. Now the vibrant images of perfumed gloves and secret letters, of whispered jokes and ancient charms, slowly, tenderly dissolve into the mists of time. There is a profound comfort in recognizing that even across centuries, the fundamental human experience of desire remains a constant, a delicate thread weaving through every life, every era. The precise costumes, the intricate dances, the specific dangers may have been unique to Elizabethan England, yet the yearning for connection, the exquisite joy of affection, the piercing pang of loss, and the silent courage required to lie to love in defiance of the world, these are echoes that truly transcend all time, resonating within our very own spirits. The distant murmurs of those long-ago hearts, once so intensely alive with hope and fear, now settle into a calming whisper, assuring us that the intricate, beautiful, and sometimes sorrowful dance of human longing is an eternal part of our shared journey. We are all, in our own ways, still participating in that ancient, timeless yearning, bathed in the soft, fading light of a shared humanity.